I wrote about 100 years of Washington rowing. And each one of those teams has a unique story. And each one of those teams has a Joe Rantz. I mean, they all have these young people who have struggled as youth, and then they come out the other side and they're not struggling anymore. There's all of these stories that go along, and they're positive stories, they're good stories. After coming out of the pandemic, we need good stories, and this is one of them.
We heard that the story of our town hero, Joe Rantz, is being made into a movie by the one and only George Clooney. There are 160 homeless kids in our town, and 50 unaccompanied high schoolers who are couch surfing or living in their cars just trying to get by, just like Joe did.
Sequim does not receive any funds for a shelter to house these homeless youth.
As a part of Interact and Rotary Club, we want to be able to shelter those kids
and raise money for the Joe Rantz Rotary Youth House.
We need your help to garner attention and get the word out to George Clooney and his team.
In a town where our industry is mainly tourism and hospitality, farming, a lot of students experience homelessness with their families, and many students leave their families and experience homelessness by themselves. And there's no opportunity for them to leave, to expand, to leave that poverty cycle.
I personally know people that have been couch surfing or living at other people's houses, and I just think that it's important that everyone has the same opportunities and have a place to live and stay and thrive.
These students have done so much for not only their local community in our school district, but they've taken on international service projects.
You look at what they have done, the programs they put together for getting tuxedos for kids who can't go to prom, to more importantly getting housing for kids who are unhoused.
They kind of started off a movement of their own, you know. It's an inspiration, and that I think Dad would have been really excited about.
Joe is one of those huge success stories that came out of Sequim, where he was struggling in homelessness. He experienced a lot of hardships, a lot of poverty, and making it to the University of Washington and eventually went to the Olympics and won is just so moving and so heartfelt to see how support what Interact is doing can really impact individuals as well as the community.
This building kind of represents what Joe is able to do, which kind of symbolizes what we can do in the futures.
I think it's important that people know where we came from and what got us here. I think it's just also a really cool building.
ASUW Shell House is the place where the excellence really started at the University of Washington. In 1923 was the first year we won the IRA. And we're celebrating that, 100 years of winning the national championship at the University of Washington this year. And it came out of that boathouse. It started there.
This building was built in 1918. It's one of only 2 World War I hangars built of wood left standing. And it has this proud aviation history that I think can really inspire young people and older people alike to reflect back on things that have happened here and be inspired to do something for themselves.
It's always been a public place. Before it was a canoe house, and then it was a sailing house, and it was a rowing place. And so I think it's a place where you can show other people can come in and be inspired. And that's what the University of Washington should do. It should inspire the next youth, the next leaders of our communities, and that's a great space to do it.
Generations of young athletes have moved through that building and learned to believe in something bigger than themselves, and also learned to get out of themselves something more than they ever thought was possible.
It taught me teamwork, it taught me trust. It taught me to be humble. It taught me how to lose. It taught me how to win. There are all of these really important life lessons that are kind of coalesced in that framework of time.
It's part of the fabric and the history of both this organization, this school, and this state, and frankly, this country. These things are not to be taken for granted because clearly you can't recreate that kind of history, and it's a special place as a result of that.
If you're removing these historical artifacts and buildings, you're removing all the people that have had experiences here and have really been moved. Joe Rantz had a lot of growth while he was here. He really came into himself. He worked really hard, and these historical buildings mean so much to so many people. And preserving it is important so that people can learn those experiences that other people have learned while they were here.
I think it was very important for them to be here and see it and say, hey, I can do this.
This boathouse shaped a lot of our town's history, and with the youth house, it's going to be very important.
We wanted a place that allowed kids to still be able to stay in Sequim so they could stay connected to their community.
Giving them a home and giving them some place to start is the first way to step out of that cycle of poverty that will leave them in homelessness for the rest of their lives, really.
The fact that they understand how important community is, even irrespective of that building. But then I feel like that's almost a multiplier for them to have the pride in a guy like Joe Rantz coming from their community, a very small community, and to make it where he did on the world stage. And to see where he came from, again, I feel like it just connects the dots.
So much of his life was basically uncentered and homeless and cast aside. And this building was where he found family and the ability to trust. It was a life changer for him. It was important. And to see it become something that will be important to other people, that would have, I think, warmed his heart.
The whole purpose is to prevent what Joe had to go through from happening to anybody else. Make that struggle a little bit easier. If Joe had had those resources earlier, his life would have been very different. He didn't graduate in Sequim High School. He moved to Seattle because he wasn't really going to get those opportunities in Sequim. And we're hoping that with this youth house, it will give kids the opportunity to succeed.